so scary sometimes to trust that. So I'm feeling very grateful for this physical body and allowing it to show up and to listen.
Super grateful for that. Can you guys all share that gratitude for our vessels right now and being able to be here and to receive? Awesome. Thank you. And Celia, how about you? Do you have something you're feeling especially grateful for today?
Yeah, I'm feeling so grateful for feeling really comfortable in my own skin. And it is no mistake we're talking about resonance, but it's one of my favorite things ever. And just feeling so grateful for feeling very resonant. And just popping off of a webinar right now where I ended up speaking half of the webinar about the importance of resonance and giving examples of what I do to be really resonant. And so being able to just be free and say all those random things and say, I'm going to do my webinar my own way, and this is the way I roll, and I hope you like it. And if you don't, that's okay. So just feeling very, very grateful for being at that point in my life where I've done a lot of work to really feel like, hey, this is me and I like it. I hope you do too.
Yeah, I think I echo those both, and I'm so grateful for them. And I also, I guess I'll express my gratitude, and I hope everyone else can see too, that what you both are shining and exuding is the outcome of resonance. And that's that feeling of freedom and deep peace with self that comes from when we're aligned in this way. So I'll add that little bow on top of the package of gratitude. And again, just welcome everyone who's found their way into this September salon on resonance, those who will be listening to the recording as well. Lots of resources in the Mystic Society portal about resonance, where I get up and I share the methodology and I talk, in my crazy hand talky way about all the pieces of resonance that mean so much to me. Well, this is an opportunity today for us to turn the tables a little bit and for Elena and Celia to ask the questions about resonance and bring the story forward. So excited to have you all here, and I will turn it over to you two, Elena and Celia, and we can get the party started on resonance.
Well, I feel like jumping in terms of, and if you guys don't know, I'm assuming you know, but Elena, Lindsay, and I are also business partners in the Simply Sacred company, and also have the Sacred CEO retreat in Tulum, whoop, whoop, coming up in a couple weeks or a couple months. But so we spend a lot of time together, and one of the things we talk about is, this is more Lindsay's language, but inner ring language and outer ring language, or meaning also sort of specific language that you have to be part of the club to get, and then universal language that everybody that walks up on the street and you say the word gets. And so since we're talking about resonance as if it's something every single person here knows, there's a part of me that wants to just hold up that flag of like, hey, how about we just deconstruct that a little bit? And so for you, Lindsay, since I know you've taught in my programs, and I've seen you so many times talk about ACAR, and I know you said they can see it in the portal, but I do feel like if you could give a fairly quick overview of what are we talking about when we're talking about resonance, and what are the core things that people could look at, because then I feel like everything would flow out of that.
I would love that. Would you be willing to define resonance for you first? I'd love to hear.
No pressure. Well, I feel like one of the ways I can just say off the top of mine is when you're really authentically yourself and being in your truth without any masks on, the energy imprint that you give out through what you transmit into the world becomes a match for other people that are either looking for that or see you in themselves. And so really the resonance it's about a dance. It's about a partnership. It's about creating that alignment.
Yeah. And I just want to play off the other side of that too, because that really is one of the main definitions is what you're putting out. It's a very specific, authentic imprint, which is received. And then the other side of that is you receiving resonance from around you. Mm-hmm. So I think there's always two sides at play when
I love that.
Talking about resonance, what you're putting out and what you're receiving. And you can resonate with something, but they don't resonate with you. There are really more, it's more than just we're a beautiful partnership and it's going to be awesome. It has to be very mutual and very authentic for, like you said, those two things to come together.
Yeah.
That partnership. So I think between those two sides, but there's probably a third one, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point, right? Because there's things out there that are not me and not you, that are calling to us. And so how do we tap into that third element of it as well? Maybe we can go there too.
Sweet. No, that's so helpful, because I think it's a great point, so you bring forward about defining it first, because it isn't something we always take the time to really think about, because it's one of those qualities that we experience. It's a vibrational thing. And when we start to look at how resonance fits into something like business alchemy or marketing, it isn't always the easiest thing to start from us and talk about resonance going outward. It's often easier to think about what has been resonant or not resonant on the receiving end. So just like you both just said, not only is it vibrational, not only is it this quality, but it has this immediate connotation of there being a give and a take. There's something that goes out and there's something that gets received. And I like this idea that resonance also illustrates or illuminates for us what a match is, because when something's feeling resonant, it feels like that match. So again, I think the first way to anchor into it is to maybe think about things that have or have not been resonant for you, and notice what a rich tapestry that is, because sometimes we can identify just on visuals alone when something is resonant for us. You land on someone's homepage and you're like, oh, it's just, it is or it isn't me, or the copy is or isn't, lighting me up, or can even be actually turning you off. There's this idea that there's a pretty quick read that happens on resonance on the first level for a lot of us. But then there's also layers of deeper resonance that come with getting to know each other, or having more time to learn each other's languages, or get to know one another, where we start to get into those deeper layers. But for the most part, once you start to actually invite the kind of resonance, that means you're getting a full return on your energy, where you're actually seeing that return flow back to you that matches or exceeds what you're putting out in the world. It's a combination of both. It's a combination of you've done the work for that first glimpse, or that first whatever it is that you're putting out, like your front door is resonant to who you are, and people, as Celia said, are either going to jive with it or they're not, and that's okay. But then it also has that second layer of you're living that, and you're actually walking it, and it actually has some there behind it, so that as they get to know you more, that first glimpse actually matches the experience they have with you long term. It's the difference between that thing of it looks shiny and pretty on the outside, but inside it's not really a match. That kind of feeling we have maybe when we've seen a guru or someone who's espousing a certain lifestyle or way, but then you don't actually get the sense that that's what's happening behind closed doors. So resonance does have this kind of immediate hit that we pick up on extrasensory but then it also has this piece that's part of the crafting of a longer term relationship as well.
Yeah, so I hear you talking about several different areas, and one that sort of first landed on me and hasn't let go yet is when you talked about going to someone's website, which I think we're all sort of curious about that, because we want to resonate with our tribe, and we want to, that cool quote that goes around every once in a while, your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah.
And that's the resonance piece. So do you think there's an emotional link, if someone feels something, whether it's positive or negative, there's a resonance? I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but that creates our resonance. And resonance, we're assuming it's always positive, but is there also a not so positive side to resonance? Is it more of a going away?
Yeah.
So I guess the question is there an emotional link with resonance? So how do you feel it?
Vibrational stuff by its very nature evokes emotions. That's how we feel. And it's whether we're feeling connected and attracted to, or whether we're feeling, maybe even the word can be repulsed from, that push-pull is in play. I think, this kind of brings forward the origins of the ACAR model and the resonance model to begin with, because it was born from a consulting project that I was blessed to be a part of, working with a global nonprofit and socially conscious organization called the 8 Shields Institute with John Young. And this was an organization that had primarily been person to person, local schools connected by a network, immersion programs, but not really a virtual company or what we would think of as an online teaching company per se. And yet they were stepping into a next phase of their global growth, and were looking at the teachings that had kind of proven the test of time across their schools and communities and programs. And they wanted to bring forward an electronic program that would be accessible to anyone, anywhere at an accessible price point. And they had gone into a 2-year strategic redesign to kind of grow the container of their company to have this online component. They'd worked with some incredible experts from all over the globe. They had done a rebranding. They, brought on a platform. They enhanced their CRM. It was a really big undertaking. And about 6 months, I think, after I started consulting with the H. Shields Institute, the product itself was ready to launch, and all of this work and all of these cross-functional teams were kind of ready to bring this product forward for the first time. And there was a tremendous amount of team pride and organizational pride in the product. Really, really excited. And so a list building effort happened, a huge bunch of summits and free calls. And that's really an environment that John Young really thrives. He's a storyteller and a teacher, and he's been talking and teaching, for decades and decades. So it was a really great platform for him to shine. And then the product itself was released, and the kind of first email sequences went out. And not only was it not resonant with the new tribes they had built through this, online launch funnel, but it actually turned off a lot of their core believers and core tribe, people who had been followers of the organization for years and years, some decades. And so we saw not only was it not a successful launch and conversion, it was actually detrimental to the base that they had been building for years and years. And so it caused everybody to have this kind of screech to a halt, pause moment of how is it possible that a well-intentioned organization really acting from a place of heart and service, bringing together the best and the brightest who are passionate about this cause, could produce something that not only didn't have the result that they'd anticipated, but actually turned off people that they loved and adored. And so it was a question we were all holding, each of us from our own lenses. And it was one of the first times for me that there was a really solid intersection between my intuitive psychic side and my business consulting side. And I started to download what I now call business alchemy methodologies. And the ACAR model was the very first business alchemy methodology that I downloaded. And it came in a complete chunk, just like many downloads do. And it was, in my belief, I'm not sure I've ever said it out loud this way, but I honestly believe it was spirit answering the sacred question of what the heck went wrong here? What happened? And we weren't talking in those rooms as we were deconstructing what had gone wrong about the word resonance. Resonance wasn't in the field. It was about engagement and email opens and unsubscribes and actual, pretty upset emails back, people saying, I don't know who you are, but you're not the company that I thought you were. I mean, really interesting backlash almost. And what downloaded was a really clear model for what resonance is, what we're actually talking about when we're putting out something in the world, and what the formula is that helps you deconstruct that. So perhaps you can not only look at where you are in the process and what's contributing to your own resonance, but in a case where you're maybe wanting to establish a best result or identify where something's gone wrong, you could reverse engineer it and take a peek to see where were we off, what might be going on here. So that resonant model is an acronym, ACAR. You've heard us refer to it, and it's ACAR. And again, if you want to go deeper in this, you can head into the portal, and there's some videos and support resources there. But the gist is that A plus C plus A equals R, where R is resonance. And the first A is authenticity. So, just in hearing Celia and Elena both describe what resonance is for them, you get the sense of, what's right for me, knowing me, this is my way, and if it works for you, great. Like, that's the authenticity piece that we're talking about. There's personal development journey built right into resonance, because there's almost always a journey for us in really getting to the heart of who we are and what our authentic self is, especially as we're coming forward into new roles and new ways of showing up in the world and new ways of being seen. There's these edgy pieces that follow us, which are what's really real and true for me? Let me just check to see if we have someone that can help mute here.
We're experiencing some resonance of this whole thing.
I think I got everybody. Does it sound better now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that authenticity piece is really big. And then, you hear entrepreneurs and creatives talking a lot about how they didn't know being an entrepreneur was going to be such an intense personal development journey. It's really, there's a lot to be said just in that A piece of the ACAR model, because there's so much that goes into uncovering the layers and the pieces of us that want to come forward and getting to know ourselves more deeply. The second letter is congruence, and this is an edgy one too. This is where we actually allow ourselves to show up in the world consistent with who we are on the inside. So that A, authenticity, means I know who I am, and C means I'm actually able to show up in the world congruent with who I am. That's what that C stands for. And then the second A is alignment. And that A for alignment is how well are you actually aligning to who you are here to talk to, who you think you're talking to, who you're actually talking to. And then we get into things like your understanding of your client avatar, your choice of words, your languaging. So together, that authenticity, congruence, and alignment is what creates the resonance that you're putting out. And in the case of the 8 Shields Institute, it was a really interesting thing, because that one launch actually had the failure of that launch ended up becoming such a powerful teaching tool for all of us, because it illuminated aspects of the organization that wanted to be more fully expressed and maybe weren't. It illuminated parts of how the organization expressed its own growth. All of this amazing stuff that was going on the inside hadn't really been fully communicated to the outside. So there wasn't, by the time it showed up, it didn't feel congruent to its audience that was the same organization. Last year you were hosting, in-person family nature camps, and now you're creating an online program with a buy now button. How does that work? And then that alignment piece. How well did the organization actually understand what the desires and needs of their core believing group was? And how do you then mix groups as you invite more? And how do you keep your finger on the pulse of your tribe as it grows to understand what they really want and what they really need? And then that dance back around again. And as you're getting that sense of alignment, how can you show up authentically within that context? So it's a iterative loop for sure. In fact, Elena, wasn't it you who first said that ACAR needed a second R in it, which was repeat?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, it was like repeat, review, or like integrate, because it almost seemed like once you have the model, I see so many people, including myself, I've done this, like I just get married to it, like the graphic or the program or whatever. And now I feel like I'm just constantly dancing with it. Like, I don't know what it's going to be next year, but I know it's going to be amazing, but I don't know exactly what it's going to be. And it feels like this dance between strategy, authenticity, and resonance. And how do you do that? So when you said the word dance, I'm like, that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing all the time. So I would love to know, because when you were talking about the launch, it does feel like there was a little bit of divine touch in there. Like they did this launch, it didn't work, but the result was that they were able to reverse engineer and figure out what went wrong. And then also like create this beautiful new process for themselves and really pulse into what their tribe does want and does need. Doesn't mean they're not going to make mistakes again, but it just means that they are more aware of it now, which is really what we all want to be, is aware of our own sort of, process. So absolutely. I'm curious for you, because you've done things that have continued over time, and then you've done things that are just like, I'm just going to do this because it feels so good and it fills up and it's awesome. So are there any like things that you do on a regular basis to be able to dance that in your own business? Because we are, growing businesses, and we want to know, how do you dance that? Is there a specific tip or rule that you make for yourself, or guideline, or just a remembering?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, because it's like it is a dance between create what you feel called to create and what spirit is guiding you to create, without being worried about who's on the receiving end and where it's meant to go, but then also allowing for these iterative cycles that allow for change and allowing for feedback loops. And so, I navigate all those things myself. I think a lot of the things you hear me talk about when we're looking at new paradigm business, and maybe new paradigm is another vocabulary word we want to look at more deeply and deconstruct. But when we're talking new paradigm business, you hear me say things like communicate early and often, or iterate, or to allow that imperfection. Like the imperfectionist thing, I think, is so important as you navigate resonance, because look at the example of 8 Shields. Millions of dollars and lots of time into a passion project that really wasn't vetted outside the inner sanctum of the company. And what would it have been to have invited in focus groups, to have tested some models, to have shared some ideas, to have gotten people's thoughts? What programs do you like? Are you open to online learning? What could that look like? Instead, there was this kind of incubator feeling, like we're building something phenomenal, and when we release it, everybody will love it. And I think we see that a lot in online business, this thing of how much do you reveal and not reveal, and are you breadcrumbs or not breadcrumbs. And that, just think, for me myself, I tend to err on the side now of dip a toe, communicate. If it's resonant for me, then it will find its way. And if it's and if I'm allowing myself to ask the questions and to stay open and to gauge response, then that actually becomes an information loop back into me, and I can continue to develop and refine in a way that it is exactly that dance, that it's both authentic and feels genuine and real for me, but it's also meeting the needs of the people who are, and how interesting that we're doing a resonance salon where we're actually reversing the model of the match and the give and take, because that's exactly what we're talking about here. No coincidence.
As we were going through the ACAR model and I was applying it to myself, I was thinking the piece, like, I feel like the authenticity and the congruence piece, personally, I feel really strong on. I'm like, I got that. And then the alignment, I'm like, I got that. But then I'm like, okay, but it doesn't always go right. There's certainly like the lessons, and there's the failed launches and the blah, blah, blahs. And so I'm like, it seems like the first A and C, and when you're a newer entrepreneur, and certainly as you continue to evolve, are the pieces that are really the deep interpersonal work of getting comfortable in your own skin and, showing up in the world on the outside the way you are on the inside and all that stuff. But then it seems like if you can maintain that, presuming you can maintain that, then the piece about the alignment seems to be, as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur, the piece that you sort of keep coming back to.
Yeah.
And so when Elena is referencing the integration or the repeat, I personally feel like I spent a lot of time in that A of alignment of like, okay, I think it's really aligned, and I've been like checking in, and this is what they said they want, but something's not quite right. And so what's the course correct, or what's the pivot? So I'm just curious I'm presuming if I have that come up for me, that these ladies do as well. So can you give any tips, tools, if you spend a lot of time in the alignment section?
Yeah. What
are things that you might do or look at to try and figure out what might be missing?
Yeah, such good questions. And honestly, I mean, if I was on this salon without you here, Celia, and someone was asking that exact question about alignment, I would probably point them to you to look at a great model for alignment, because I'm not sure there's anyone out there who's better at pulsing a room, whether it's in person or virtual or a mailing list, the way that you do, that says, I want to hear what you have to say. How are you, and how are you, and how are you, and what's working for you, and what about this? And so, I mean, I love that this one really resonates for you, because it's one that you clearly are passionate about and you're really, really good at, and you care about deeply, because you're wanting to even refine it and make it deeper and better. So anyway,
thank you. I received that. It's true, as Elena would say, it's true.
It's so good. But, I think alignment was a big one in the 8 Shields example too. I mean, I think that they could have brought that change and the authenticity piece of the identity of the organization forward sooner. And I think their ability to show up congruently was impacted by the fact that people's perception of them didn't match, even though they were authentic in themselves. But the alignment piece was really tricky, and it is tricky, especially for those of us who are growing businesses, because the word growth implies change and new numbers. And that means you're not talking to the same group day in and day out and week over week. So having systems in place and process in place to stay in touch with your audience is really, really important. I'll say that there's an interesting dance that also comes into play with alignment around who you want to be talking to. And I see this all the time with creatives and entrepreneurs, which is we're told, visualize your dream client and the person who you want to be talking to and start talking to them. And on the one hand, that's great advice because we want to be calling forward the opportunity to work with those people that delight us. But we also sometimes then amputate our ability to speak effectively to the people who are right there saying, I'm here and I see you and I want what you have to teach me. So it's this interesting dance that we have. I think that an example that comes to mind that maybe will clarify this further is the Brendan Burchard conference that a lot of you have heard me talk quite a bit about. And we actually did a debrief call, so you can find that in the portal if you want. But at one point he was talking about his own growth and his own basically resonance journey. And he said, we've been using this same conference room now forever. I can't remember, 2 or 3 years. And he said, I'll be honest with you, the room can grow or shrink based on how many people are in this room. We just slide the stage forward or we slide the stage back. And he said, but what's really important for you all to remember, and he's talking to the audience, is that I'm showing up here with my message and my truth and my passion and my commitment to serve, whether there's 1 row of people sitting here in this auditorium or whether there's 300 rows. And he said, the important thing to remember is if you're doing this thing where you're reaching past your current audience to talk to people who aren't even in the room yet, it's almost like you've pushed that stage back and you're talking to a big empty room and you're not actually looking at or engaging those 30 people sitting in that front row. This is kind of what I'm saying about Celia's gift too, is like if that were to happen where Celia landed in a 1,000-person auditorium and there were 30 people in the front row, I promise you she's not going to act like that's not happening and keep talking out to the last row. She's going to say, come on in here. We have the opportunity to do something special. Circle around and let's talk. So it's like actually seeing your people and actually listening to what, we came here for a conference, but there's 30 of us. Like this gives us unprecedented access to each other. I actually want to hear what's alive for you and for you and for you. And so, his point was, don't miss what's right in front of you by talking over or around the people who are right there looking at you. And the neat thing about that is when you start to get good at that with the 30 people in the front row, maybe that's your 1 person on your list or your 100 people on your list, those rows start to fill in because resonance grows, vibration grows. And the more you're in that feedback loop of what's working for yourself and for your tribe, it's infectious. It actually grows. And that's when you really start to experience the magic of resonance, which is when things start to flow to you and the doors start to open and the opportunities start to come. And that return on energy is greater than what you put into it. And that magic of resonance is really the why we're doing this as well. It's the sweet spot.
I love that. Go ahead, Celia.
Well, because you said the magic of resonance and the sweet spot. And I think it's such an important point again, because as much time as we all spend working with new and intermediate and advanced entrepreneurs, a lot of times we're looking for the cash, right? It's like, where's the money? So it's like, if the money is not there, somehow we have failed. And we could have 20 emails in our inbox of like, oh my God, your webinar changed my life. I don't have the money for your program, but like you just changed my life. Or, Facebook messages, or you walk down the street and somebody amazing walks by and says, I don't know why, but I'm so drawn to you. Like, I love your energy. Right. So it's like, I really would just love if we could just talk a little bit about that piece of, I think that we are, and you and I in our sessions, we talked about it, like, I think for all of us, it's part of the way we've been created especially in American society, is to be so focused on, making money and that part of the puzzle in a totally disproportionate piece of the pie, right? And so for all of my ladies, I'm always telling them, I'm like, look, in the beginning, it may not come in money. You know what? But what you need to do is be like a dog following that scent, that trail. And if you are seeing good stuff happen and you're like, okay, that feels good to me, that feels resonant, that feels like a sign that I'm on the right path, and you need to keep moving ahead, because that's a sign that you're going where you're supposed to go. But there is that piece that comes up about, but why isn't it money? Or what's the issue with the money? And so I just wanted to throw that out there, see what you think.
I love it. And it gives me an opportunity to say too, that, so back up a little in my own entrepreneurial story, right? After 8 Shields, a man that I met there at 8 Shields Institute, Aaron Baker, and I determined we loved working together. We wanted to be business partners. His family is kind of like a mirror image to mine. We felt like it was this, divine merging of, sacred masculine, divine feminine. We were going to go change the world. And our first company was creating we were doing consulting, I guess, first, but our entrepreneurial endeavor was to create this online tracker that helps people overcome chronic illness. And we kind of did a little bit of that same 8 Shields thing. We went off into the tower and we put all our best thinking and all the best consultants. We ended up investing multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in this software platform that I still to this day think is elegant and beautiful and wonderful and should be the most resonant thing on the planet for changing anybody's life who is experiencing chronic illness. And then what happened when we released it? Total crickets. Our little pilot, not so much. And okay, we have, 300 happy users, but it's kind of lukewarm and doors not really opening here and there. And so where did I find myself? Exactly where Celia is describing, which is like, oh my goodness, I've invested a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money. This isn't resonant. And what am I going to do? On top of that, I had my chronic illness journey. I had my own stuff going on financially. I think Casey also at that point had been off on disability. And so our whole financial world was in a really unique new place that I hadn't been in before. And it was Celia's call to action that was resonant for me that I picked up and ended up on a call with Celia where she, just like that person who can speak to the 30 in the room or who can get down to business in 10 minutes and say what's really going on here. And I will never forget. She's like, I am certain that this is actually showing you something. And if we did this together, we could get to the bottom of what's actually trying to come forward. And you know what came forward within just a matter of months? A meeting Elena is one, and actually being part, and I know Elena and I might get to share a little bit of that resonance story, but being part of a mastermind and working with Celia, and the Mystics came forward. Very first time, another download. So notice how the universe kind of used resonance or lack thereof to keep me moving on this journey of what are you actually here on the planet to do? Because I could probably still be the CEO of a chronic wellness tracker app. Well, I still am actually, but I could still be 100% focused on that. And what a missed opportunity that would have been to not actually be fully living in my gift of what I'm clearly meant to be doing here, which is talking about magic for a living. So on the one hand, I want to say, yes, be that little, money sniffing dog, resonance sniffing dog, magic sniffing dog that says it's not any one of these indicators that's actually the indication of success. It's the feeling, it's the knowing, it's the asking the questions. Bring in the reflection from your sisters or your community. Find your way into the great hands of a wonderful mentor like Celia or Elena or Erin Cox, who is the woman who brought Elena and I together. In fact, right, Celia, you have Superfly going right now as well. So I really want to encourage people to find their way into your world if they haven't already.
Yes.
But yes.
which just to say, that was what you and I did together. You were part of the first class of my private group that went through basically my beta Superfly together. And I still remember when we were on the phone, because we had like all these sessions and we kept going through the wellness stuff and okay, what can we create with that? And what are some options with that? And then it was like through all of that, somehow just this mystic spiritual stuff just kept coming in and you were just being Lindsay and being yourself. And I was like, this lady has a gift. And I just remember telling you, I'm like, okay, that stuff is all good, but can I just say, like, I really think like you're here for this purpose. And you were like, oh yeah, okay, well, I sort of just do that like that's just who I am. You're like, I've never thought about doing that as business. And you felt really vulnerable too. Yeah. You were like, I don't know about like going out in the world with this. Like and you still to this day have those moments, you know, like I sort of just want to be in my room, be like the quiet behind the counter. Nobody knows who I am. But then it was like the second that you jumped in there, it was like, boom, you know, it went off. So that's, I love that. Such a good.
Well, and you also, there was another pivotal moment, and I think both of you reflected this to me in different ways, but around that time I had found my way into doing the Facebook parties that I loved.
I loved that.
That was so fun for me, and that people enjoyed. And they didn't really, I mean, it wasn't a big money thing. It was all about, it was just all about having fun and bringing people together and giving a lot of gifts. I was giving away tons and tons of free stuff, which was a total delight for me. And each one of you in your way, I remember Elena saying something about like being in my sweet spot. And I remember Celia saying something about whatever that is, you need to do more of that. Like that's what it feels like is basically what you were saying. Like that's what your resonance feels like. And that's been a great barometer for me every step of the way since, because when the first, you know, what came through is the very first mystic download was, you know, coming out of a mystic nap one afternoon, and I just free-form flowed. It's the sales page to this day, by the way. So it's not following any sales page conventions or anything like that. But I think I put it in front of Elena in that circle. I was like, what the heck is this? And you were like, put it up. That's a sales page. And it really is just the feeling of resonance that has guided me since then. As you get to know your own physiological response to resonance, you can let that guide you. You know what you feel like when you're being resonant. And that's a pretty powerful place from which to act.
Yeah, you bring up a really, really good point. And this is really what I know Celia teaches in Superfly and what I teach in the Divine Self-Care Circle, just in life in general. And Lindsay, this is so much of what I witness you doing and you modeling so beautifully, that there is no template, that there is no way of succeeding. There is no one sales page. There is no one program. And I see so much of this coming through with the circles that we're all in, with the women are like, I tried that. I followed every step. You know, I did exactly this, or whether you did or didn't is sort of irrelevant. But the point is, were you ever stopping to check in how it felt for you? Perhaps that template was exactly what you needed to propel you into the next level of your business, but maybe it wasn't. So I'm not saying that templates are bad. I use templates for some things, but there's always that pause, that point of resonance check-in to see, does this feel good for me in my body? Does this feel good? Is this something I really want to do? Do I believe in it? Do I feel that whatever that feeling is for me, that fluttery in my belly or my heart is like feeling expansive, or it's like, can't even like, oh, I'm so excited. You know, it seems like a really big topic, but if we can bring it back into the physical, to just know what does resonance feel like in my body. It's that first time you meet someone who you're like, oh my God, we're going to be best friends forever. And then you are, because you were so right. You know,
that's how I felt about you.
I know. We're like, oh my God, this is so good. And really, you know, and both are true. Like even in our trio, in our business partnership, yes, it felt very right away. And which Lindsay teaches so well, is it also took a very slow sort of, okay, is this still right? Yes, it is. Okay, one more step. Is this still right? Yes, it is. Like the connection and the bond and the promise never left, but the navigation of 3 different businesses in one direction is a heck of an undertaking. So it requires deep, deep resonance for all of us all the time. It requires each of us to be authentic, to be very, very clear on where we are aligned or not aligned, and reflect that to each other. But first and foremost, we need to be resonant ourselves. Yeah. And then knowing that, you know, not everything's going to feel good and we have to speak it. So on the entrepreneurial path, even on just the daily alignment path, there seems to be this like mystery about it, but it can be very, very simple too. Yeah. So what are some cues for you that you're like, oh yes, or like, oh no. So you mentioned one of them, which was, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I want it to be fun. Are there any other cues that you count on when you're trying to release the template and just be in your path?
You know, I love the phrase some people use of like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. But I'm actually not very good at that. I mean, I'm 100% clear when it's a hell yes, and it's easy for me to act from that place. I'm not as much the black and white of if it's not that feeling, it's a no. I tend to be a sit with it and take it to spirit person. And from there, then I'm either guided forward in the direction of the next step or the missing piece. I delight in the fun part where it's just, the pieces that are just Elena, you talk about this a lot. Like, it just dropped in last night. I knew exactly what to do. I created it. I posted it. It was resonant. Thank you, spirit. Those are such fun moments. But for me, they're not always the norm. I often spend a lot of time in the space of, okay, there's something to look at. I'll take it to spirit. I'll hold it in sacred inquiry. Even as I'm inviting, my mastermind, as you guys know, is hand selected. It's super high touch. And even after we get off the phone, it's like, we're both going to take it to spirit and see if this is a yes. This isn't a act now before we get off Zoom and this is what's going to happen. So that, that doesn't follow typical coaching or sales conventions of the best way to convert, but it's the only way I know how to do it authentically. And it has served me and worked for me. Mm-hmm. And so, the body cues, the fun factor, sometimes the opposite. I can tell very quickly when something is not going to be right. I can feel that in my solar plexus. And sometimes I even can get a taste in my mouth if something's not right. And I will always listen to that, whether it's just to push pause or actually to set down altogether, because that feeling has never failed me, for sure. And the couple of times I can think of where I overrode that feeling, very quickly saw why it didn't serve.
Yeah, I really want to highlight what you said. Sorry, so and then you can go. It's and I wrote this thing down. It really speaks to what I was sort of musing on resonance, but you really hit this point where, yes, there's part of me that's really good at creating in the moment because it feels so good. But what I don't share sometimes is that actually it's been percolating for a very long time. Yeah. And I wasn't ready to share it. So yeah. I'm very curious about letting things sit now, but I think it's also part of living longer. Yeah. And every year I feel like the roots go deeper and the connection goes higher. And I can trust that someone said patience, I wrote in the notes, patience has been my word, like a patient expansion. Like, it's okay if I can let it go deeper, not just to the first level or the second level or the third level, but what would the fourth level be like? And sometimes it's a matter of just getting it out there because that procrastination can just eat away at you. Yeah. Sometimes there is a matter of let's just do it and see what happens, versus this is bigger. This is something I really want to be mindful with, but letting it percolate and go deeper and letting it really see how it resonates with you over time, because we women are emotional beings, and we have times of our month, and we have times in our relationship, and we have times in our mothering, and we have times in our, money situation, which can make us feel resistant or excited. Right. So I wonder how I would feel a month from now. Is it still going to be this thing that I really, really, really want to do? In fact, in the shower this morning, I was like, oh my God, I'm launching the 3rd full year of my program. That's so cool. It just made me want to cry because it is resonant and it is patiently expanding. And it's something that still feels really good. Whereas at the beginning, the feedback that I got from unsolicited feedback was, oh my God, a year program, it's going to be crazy. You're going to have to work so hard. And in fact, it's been the complete opposite. It's been a pure joy to be in it and get to know the women over the years. So the patient expansion and letting it sit has been a real deep resonance as well. So I love that you do that, because you do model that again really well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Celia.
I just want to chime in on the patient expansion, but then also to talk about the pivot, because I know it's one of our favorite things or strategies and things we go to. But on the patient expansion, I just also wanted to bring up, I feel like also in the world of entrepreneurialism and in particular online business, right? It's we are so programmed to feel like we're supposed to have the overnight success and the quantum leap. And I know we all love those terms and, pray on them and everything, but it's that's what we're socialized to believe is the norm when it's actually really not. And so it's like I had to, sometimes if you think about the level of success that you might have in a program or offering, it's actually very significantly successful, right? In the big scope of things, in the world of everybody else who's going to the 9 to 5 every day, and you get to do what you're doing, and you're having this level of resonance and affirmation and financial success. But when you compare it to looking at everybody's posts online, in a minute, you can feel like a fraud or, I feel like a failure. And I really love the patient expansion, because even for myself, who I would say by most measures has had tremendous success, I was just thinking today, I was like, oh, and I reflect on the resonance all the time, right? Because I'm like staying in that place of the alignment. I spent a lot of time in the alignment. I'm like, okay, I did that. And getting to your question about the course correction or the pivot is I spend a lot of time doing that, right? So I'm not like a quick pivoter, but I do something and I test it and I put it out there and I see if it's working. And then if it needs to, I make a tweak or I make a pivot and we can go deeper into that. But because I spent a lot of time there, I've been reflecting on my success and my growth and my patient expansion, right? And so but then I had to talk to myself about like, okay, well, what are the things that are still not quite right? You know, like where can you really be honest with yourself? And there are certain things that I know. I'm like, oh, there's still that piece that I haven't quite finished that I know when I finish, like in my mind, I already know in my soul, when that happens, that's going to be like an energy flow that right now is a block. Okay. So there's certain things that it's like, even at the level of expansion where I'm at, there's still some pieces that just have not quite come together because I haven't had enough time or whatever, but I'm aware of, okay, but still, this has been growing very nicely. You know, you have a lot to be proud of. You love what you're doing. You love who you work with. You feel very authentic. And then the future is bright for where this can continue to evolve in as you continue to evolve and make these shifts as well. So really love that. And then just getting back to the question of the pivot or the course correction, can you give some thoughts on that or examples?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're talking to it right now, and it's such a good question, especially, and maybe I'm actually the worst person to speak to it, because when I think about myself and my own business ecosystem, I'm clearly multi-passionate. There's a lot that I enjoy doing. I keep a lot of plates spinning in the air, and I like it that way, and I'm grateful for all of it. But I haven't been a person who's followed a traditional pivot from like the Silicon Valley software standpoint, where it's like Hewlett Packard in 1996 decides that PCs are not going to be the market that it can be successful, and therefore it's going to go 99% into printers, and that's what you see from that point forward, and Hewlett Packard is now a printer company. I mean, that's kind of a classic tech pivot, like a beast and an animal that I don't actually even fully understand or subscribe to in our current model. Because as creatives and as entrepreneurs, and certainly as multi-passionate women, the reality is it's all connected. It's all part of an ecosystem, that giving yourself that expansive time to check in and to do the alignment pieces means that you're not actually pivoting by that old definition at all. You're actually deepening. And you're going deeper and deeper, and you're refining in a way that becomes more and more resonant to you and to them. So when people look at me and ask me about the pivot that I made from wellness into the mystics, I always think that's really funny, because it might look like I kind of went this way and then that way. And the reality is it's all interconnected, and one became a stepping stone to the other. I had a great session with Al Lipper, who we brought in to talk about growing a membership tribe. And he has been working in tech incubators and at Cal Poly for years with entrepreneurs and startups. And he's like, the funny thing about entrepreneurs are you are by your very nature multi-passionate. It's why you landed in this space where you're innovating and you're doing it your own way. Mm-hmm. Because my advice is, whenever you start to hit a spot in a business where it is slowing down, the resonance maybe isn't there, you're not getting the return on energy and investment, he goes, avoid the trap of thinking like you need to pull the plug on anything. Move it to the back burner and just let it simmer and follow what the universe is showing you now. And that has been great advice for me, because it allowed me to run my companies in such a way that I could prioritize our resources and our time where the universe was showing me things wanted to grow. Now, interestingly enough, certain phases along the journey, there became interest in the tracker. One of the smaller apps that we did that serves coaches started to get really good traction. And I was like, interesting. Just by me focusing my energy on where I'm meant to be and I am most resonant, that resonance trickled through the entire ecosystem of our business. And we started to see all of it rise together. So on the one hand, I guess I'm saying I'm not sure I subscribe to the idea of pivot at all. And instead, I would love to invite people to trust what wants to grow and trust what wants to pause, and allow yourself to wiggle the widgets forward in that way. The other piece is around the definition of success, because you use that word, Celia, as you're kind of talking about that, giving yourself the expansive time to allow. And I think I can't remember who I was telling last week, but within 48 hours last week, I had 2 conversations with people that I love very much and who love me. And one of them was saying how they were feeling really bad for me about my business, and that I must feel really bad that it hadn't done what I would have wanted it to do. And I was like, wow. And then not 24 hours later, very similar type role in my person was like, you must be just bursting with gratitude with the success of your business and all these things you've accomplished. And I thought, it was so great for the universe to put those 2 interactions so close together and side by side, because neither of them were actually about my definition of success at all. Neither of them actually asked me if I felt successful in what I'm doing. Both had their own idea of what success looked like. And to one of them, it looked like I'm falling sadly short of that mark. And to the other one, it looked to them like I was far exceeding that definition of success. And I think that's so important to remember, not only to not let other people's ideas of what success is deter you from what you're doing, but also to allow yourself that introspective work, like Elena's describing, to get really clear on what is success for you. What does it feel like in your own body? What is your own definition? And, working Tuesday through Thursday, 9:30 to 2:30, so you can always be at carpool isn't someone else's idea of success, but it is part of my idea of success. It's actually how I've consciously crafted my schedule and my time. So anyway, all that to say, if you are aligned to what feels like success to you, and you allow yourself to celebrate your tiny wins along the way, your successes along the way, that too has a magical quality that begins to grow and to expand and feeds your resonance. And what I see most often in entrepreneurs and creatives is actually the opposite, and if this is a new concept to you, we also did a breakout on success last month. But the point I was going to make is, we move the bar on ourselves all the time, constantly moving the bar forward of what success is. And we forget to pause and look back and say, oh my gosh, a year ago, I had never, hosted a Zoom for more than 30 people, and I hadn't done X and I hadn't done Y, and look at all that I've done. And so there's always so much to celebrate. There's always so much that you can applaud.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to chime in, since I'm in the middle of a launch, and I think for those who want to create products, programs, services, and want to market them and are trying to figure out how to do that. For me, part of what comes up for me is I always think in the context of a launch, and I know Elena does this beautifully also, excuse me, is what are all of the different possible ways and approaches that I can authentically market and brand myself in this launch window? So what are the touch point kind of opportunities that I could possibly come up with to create? And so there's obviously classic things like webinars and consults, right? And email marketing. And so those are sort of our tried and true ones that everybody would say, oh, do a webinar, do email marketing. But then things like creating a Facebook event for your, for whatever it is, right? Or doing a live streaming into your Facebook groups or on your page, or, specifically reaching out to people personally, and, coming up with doing a group consult, or doing just being innovative and coming up with things that feel resonant with you, and trying to figure out what possibly, you guys are stuck. I don't know if you can hear and see me, but you're stuck on my end. Okay. Trying to figure out, working, like deconstructing it backwards, like you said, of sort of like, what is the end game, and what are the pieces that maybe you're going to not feel resonant, and that I know that some people are going to relate to that, but some people are not. So what are the kind of things that they're going to relate to? And so within the window of a launch, whether it's a week or 2 or 3, or Elena does, a couple month long window, really feeling into that of like, okay, like I'm sending out all these emails. I know that I'm supposed to do that, but maybe that doesn't feel exactly right. So like, what are the other things this week? I feel like, okay, I need to give a little more love here, and I need to be more accessible here, and I need to do these different things. So to me, that's where the course correction or pivot comes in, of like, you do one thing and then you sort of sit with it and see what was the resonance with that for yourself and for others. And then you figure out what's the next step, instead of just figuring like, I got it all planned out, and on Tuesday I'm going to do this, and on Thursday I'm going to do this, I'm going to send 14 emails. I have them all pre-done. versus going like, okay, how many people actually opened that? Let me find the people who actually opened it and maybe clicked, and write something personally to them, so just different ways that you just continue to refine. Like you said, you're just evolving the process.
Totally.
Yes. Refining. I want to just highlight that word, because a lot of it is refining the process that you go through and asking, did it work? How did that feel? Are people responding? Okay, well, what else can I do? And that's how I developed my at least 6 week strategy. Because also, when you think about it, I've launched smaller things really fast, like over a weekend, which have been percolating over time. But when I think about something bigger, something deeper, something that's going to have more relationship qualities, like you and me and these other women are going to be together for a year. That's a relationship. Yep. What is that going to take? Let's have a courtship for 6 weeks. Like, I want you to get to know me and be in my world for 6 weeks. Because if you don't like me now, you're not going to like me for an entire year. I guarantee you. And if you like what you're seeing now, you're going to. So sometimes it's even just peeking into the soul of what you're creating and see what it requires you to do. And then feeling your way. And also, I think Celia and I share this. We sort of plan the strategy of the launch. And then the whole time it's like, well, what do I want to do today? What do I want to do today? Let's do a Facebook Live. Let's send this cool email, or just do this recorded video, or I'm out on this trail. Or it's very much a relationship building quality, what we're doing. So the resonance has to be there. It's not just, I think every company that creates widgets or not is creating a relationship, and that the ones that do it really well, like, this is my friend. Like, I will not go anywhere without my friend. That's not an accident. They are very much created that. Like, I can customize it and design it, and it's got, this is my baby, right? Not really. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So you're really creating it. It has to be something that feels so rooted in how you would do it. So. Yeah.
I love that. Well, and those, if we put those two together, those are two really great ideas and recommendations for anyone finding their way into this call to give a shot and try. So first one, just to recap Celia's point, if you were to actually look at what it is that you're releasing now, whether it's a launch or whether it's a new product being developed, aside from the quote, tried and true, the things you feel like you should do, what are the things you feel like you want to do? And let yourself brainstorm those forward a little bit. So I think that's super important, because that's how, Lindsay's crazy Facebook parties came about. I don't send a lot of emails, but I do love doing Facebook parties. So that has worked. So just one example there. And then Elena, when she mentions look into the soul of what you're offering, I hope you heard what she said there about it almost wouldn't be appropriate for Elena to have a weekend launch for a year-long program where it's like, it'd be a little, that terrible phrase, slam bam, thank you ma'am. Like, it wouldn't be right. She's this phrase courtship is what the soul of her program is actually saying. We will dance together, we will be together, and we will give ourselves the spaciousness to know if we want to enter into this relationship. So I think that's a great thing to look at. What is it, and what is the soul that you're creating, and what type of communication fits the resonance of it as well. So that was the second one. The third I was going to offer for people to try, and I know we're at time here, is I don't think anyone is maybe more clear on resonance than your higher self. I think from our human lens, we sometimes get confused. We get lost in the trappings of finding our authentic voice. We get trapped by sometimes fear or whatever it might be about being congruent and being seen. We can get into the intellectual trappings of the alignment of who am I talking to and what should that look like. But our higher selves on an energetic soul level, super, super clear about our resonance. Mm-hmm. And so one of the exercises I love when I'm going through a opening of the doors or a new offering is to go visit my higher self at the end of that offering and ask myself two questions. One is, what is the thing that made this so successful? What's that one thing you did that ended up being that one thing? Because your soul almost always knows, and it'll come to you instantly, just like a visualization or a download. It's like your higher self is happy to give you advice of what actually unfolds in alignment to your truth. And the same is true for the opposite question. What is the thing that least served? and yourself, you can also identify that right off the bat. So then when you come back into the present moment, you know where to focus your energy. Focus it on that thing that produced the most resonant results for you, and grant yourself permission to let go of the thing that really you are probably doing because of a should, or I'm supposed to, or it worked in the past, or whatever the story is. Just free yourself from that and actually move those resources and that energy to the thing that works. That makes sense? Okay. Was I a good Superfly student there, Celia? I gave action items and something.
Yay! Active, tangible takeaways.
That's what it is. Darn it, I got the lead.
Yes. Action steps are good too.
Yeah, okay. Wow. So I guess that we have found ourselves to time here. You guys have a sense of how you want to wrap the interview on resonance?
I would just like to say thank you so much for you guys coming out. Even though we didn't get to hear from you, the chat was really active. So I sense that there was resonance. I feel that there was resonance. I'm really excited. I know some of you guys are going to join us in Tulum in a couple months. So I can't wait to see you guys. Yes. Mm-hmm. And if any of you guys are still on the fence or wanting to come, definitely reach out in particular to Lindsay, because we do have a handful of spots that we want to give to our sacred sisters in our inner circles. And personally, if for any reason you guys are interested in the Superfly program, that is what it is, thesuperflyprogram.com, or reach out to me if you have any questions. And I love you all. I'm so honored to be here. And I think I'm back on Thursday with another topic with you guys.
Yeah, we'll be talking in a business alchemy breakout Thursday. Thank you, Celia, so much. Yeah, I really am a testimonial to Superfly myself. So if you guys have any questions at all, please reach out to me as well, because I'm happy to answer any questions at all. And Elena, you also have a launch coming up soon too.
I do. I feel so good about it. Just I'm starting it a little earlier this year, and I'm still sort of weaving it together and trying to figure out what it wants to be, but it feels very easy and light and playful. And the third year, I love threes. So I have some special bonuses and gifts, but that's coming a little bit later. And it feels good to me because I have this window to play with it and plan it. And just, if I can have fun in the planning, then I know that everyone will have fun in it with me. And I just want to say, I want to ask you guys a question to walk away with, is to just think about what resonated most for you. We mentioned a lot of words and a lot of beautiful tools and a lot of, story time for you. What resonated most for you? That is your soul grabbing onto something. For me, I got reminded of the word refinement, and just realizing that, as I can tend to get pretty hard on myself and prove, giving more and what more can I add? I'm like, is it really about adding more? Maybe sometimes it's about really just taking stuff away and getting so deep on what's most important. So what resonated for you the most? Because that's what your soul is calling for right now. So I just want to reflect on that and just have you share it somehow with Lindsay, or just journal about it. Take it into your own world.
I love that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm feeling so grateful. Claire, thank you for joining us in the wee hours, and Fran and Vanessa and everyone who made their way to this call. Just to kind of bounce off what Elena's saying there, I just want to say again that part of what was so resonant about this call for me, that I hope you also pick up on the meta level, was getting to weave with my two dear sister friends. And this Sacred CEO, Simply Sacred collaboration that we're doing is an expression of that soul resonance, that desire in myself and in all three of us to weave together in a way that feels really good, where we really get to be our authentic selves, and then together that produces a whole that's even more resonant than the individual parts. So feel really grateful to be witnessed in that piece of our own resonant journey. And I thank you both so much, Elena and Celia, for jumping in. And I love you all. So I'll separate us now so we can go forward and laugh our own laughs and dream our own dreams, knowing we can tap back into this basket whenever and however we desire. And I will see you guys all online. Love you all so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Good to see you all. See you in Tulum.
Bye, guys.